Hi, and welcome to today's Early Years Insights with me, Kathy Leatherbarrow, and I am joined with Sarah and Beth.
Hi.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
Sarah and Beth are both safeguarding and welfare officers here at Eden, with very important and big job roles, very valued members of the team, and we just thought we'd get you onto a podcast and talk all about your role, because you're hidden little gems in the company. Really important, and I know you mean the world to our learners as well. So lots of different learners come to you, and whether they're referred or I think some self-refer, do they?
Yeah, somewhat self-referred.
And sometimes it's just for a little bit of support,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's with bigger issues as well, isn't it?
Yeah.
But the main aim really is to make their apprenticeship as enjoyable and successful as we can, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's not a weakness, it's a strength to ask for support. And you certainly feel a lot stronger with it, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
absolutely.
and it becomes a vital life skill, doesn't it? Be able to, one, ask for support, two, listen to it and implement it.
Yeah.
So I think to start with, maybe if we just talk a bit about, support that's available, and that, people aren't, learners aren't on their own, and, what you can do to help them during their apprenticeship. Because I think sometimes learners feel a little bit isolated. They're in between two worlds, aren't they? A learning journey with their apprenticeship, but also a working environment,
Yeah.
and do they fit in?
Yeah.
Are they on their own?
That transition's really hard, isn't it?
Yeah.
We have obviously in Eden, there's a range of learners, a range of ages and stages of career and experience, but no matter where you're coming from, whether you're coming from school, whether you're coming from college, university, or from changing career, it's hard to juggle an apprenticeship. You have to learn your new work skills,
You're finding where you fit in.
find where you fit in your workplace, fitting in with a team, learning your new work skills, and alongside that, you have to work long hours in early years. Early years, you do, work longer hours. There's not a lot of flexibility out there, although there is some if you need it.
Yeah.
And if you need those adjustments, but you're working long hours, and then alongside that, you're fitting in your coursework, you're fitting in your training, learning those new that new knowledge, those new skills via your training as well. So it's really challenging to be an apprentice. It's exciting and it's rewarding, but it can be hard work, and that with your challenges from your everyday life. You might be caring for your own children, you might be caring for a family member, you might be a carer, you might be going through various sort of life experiences that are really hard to juggle. You're juggling those three things: your life, your life challenges, your workload, and your training and your coursework, and it can be challenging. It can be difficult.
It's a lot.
Three big
major
roles,
things.
Absolutely.
isn't it?
Yeah.
And I suppose for us, it's about removing a barrier. If we can remove a barrier, or at least support with removing a barrier for a learner, either with a learning need or a wellbeing need,
mental health difficulty.
We want to make sure that this apprenticeship is A, useful for them, but B, that they feel like it, that they can make progress. Because what's really challenging, and I think wider in education at the minute, is that there's a lot of need, there's a lot of pressure on SENCOs and SEND specialists and getting diagnoses, and actually it's important that we just identify what we can do to support, and we're sometimes a little bit removed as a virtual training provider and delivering that content virtually, that it can sometimes be difficult for somebody to reach out for support. But I think it's important for people to know that we are here, and we also can support them in advocating for themselves at work. And it is difficult to say, actually, I'm struggling with this, I have this need, or I've got this barrier, but actually that's a sign of strength, not a sign of weakness, to ask for help.
Because sometimes when you're so deep into all the pressures of life, it's sometimes really difficult to identify that actually I'm struggling and I need some help. And it's just, life's just tough, isn't it? It's a big strength, isn't it, to be able to say, can I just talk to
Yeah.
you?
And it's not about saying that you can't do something.
No.
It's not saying you can't do
No,
something. It's not a sign of weakness. It's just us saying, actually, we can just be a listening ear.
Yeah.
Sometimes it is just as simple as
quite often
a listening
just
ear.
somebody to listen, to reassure you, to acknowledge what you're going through.
And sometimes it's easier doing it with somebody you don't
know. Absolutely, yeah.
You can just offload everything without any judgment, can't you?
It. And that's what we offer. Is
we see that an awful lot, don't we?
We're not judgmental. We offer that non-judgmental, that impartial support.
And I think just by removing that, I'm not
Mm.
being judged. You don't know me.
And we're not assessing them. We're not their skills coach. We're not assessing them. We're not going out to setting. I would say about 90% of the time, we don't often even see their faces. We're just calling them on the phone. They're offloading, they're getting that support that they need. We can then advocate for them if they want. But actually, if they don't want, that information goes no further than just between the conversation that we have.
Yeah, it's absolutely learner-led, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's
100%.
led by them, the support, and if they want to talk to us confidentially, that's absolutely fine. And if they want us to advocate on their behalf in a workplace, we've done that before. We've had learners that have struggled to be able to talk about their mental health and what they're going through and how they're feeling in the workplace, but they need to be able to approach the manager. We've been able to coordinate that and support that. And
for some, like young apprentices especially, it's the first time they're experiencing a workplace, isn't it?
Yeah.
A hierarchy, line management,
absolutely,
senior management, and how do I portray my needs
and that's something
and my
that we're working on.
desires? It's about self-esteem as well, isn't it? And giving you the skills to just politely and diplomatically
be able to deal with these situations that comes
as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it's hard to get used to those professional sort of standards and those professional skills and how you conduct yourself and how you can approach your manager if you're struggling, and finding the right words, finding the time in early years when you can actually approach your manager. And managers and your colleagues are very busy and it's a busy environment, but we help to sort of
empower them
to be able to do that, to make choices, to think about what their options are, not to tell them about what to do. It's about giving
it's about them knowing what their choices are, what choices they can make.
And so what kind of strategies do you try and empower our learners with to make better choices and to feel more confident about themselves in dealing with the stresses of everyday life?
We've kind of very slowly kind of been developing a bank of resources, haven't we, that cover a variety of different things. So it could be just, information about a particular need. So, for example, I've been diagnosed with ADHD and I don't know what that means for me. I don't know how to navigate that. I don't know what that means. I don't know the strategies that can help me because I don't, a lot of things are the unknown when you receive a diagnosis for a need. And so us being able to provide that information and provide that signposting, it might be, okay, here are some charities, here are some organisations that are able to support you. It could be signposting them to like ACAS, for example, where it's, they can get specific employment support, because as much as we can advise what their options are, we're not in the middle of their employer. We're not getting involved in that kind of employer situation, and that's one of the things that we're working on, isn't it? Some sort of resource and some sort of learning around how to be an employee and what it's like to work in a setting, because actually when you come straight out of school, a lot of our learners, and we have quite a number of 16 to 18-year-old learners, and it's their first job and they don't know how to ask for a copy of their contract. They don't know what's in the contract. They don't know how many hours they should be doing. These things that as you get further into your career become kind of a standard thing that you would ask for, that you would do. A lot of our learners either don't have those or haven't got that person to advocate for them on their behalf. And so it's just, it's more an education of what their options are and what they can access, because a lot of people don't know that they can, go for confidential support from, autistic, the Autism Society, for example. Or kind of mental health, mine's got a lot of
They've got a lot of resources, haven't they?
but also a lot of like helplines and things that you can access that you probably wouldn't know unless you found them.
Yeah.
But between Sarah and I, as we've kind of gone and supported more learners, we've developed this kind of service directory of resources that we can go, actually, there's this, and this is specific to your area we're working on. You know, we've got learners from all over the country. And so we are working on, hopefully at some point, having
something regional.
And we have got some
regional
resources. Have got some kind of regional resources that we are developing in terms of just knowing what's out there.
Yeah.
Because that's difficult, isn't it, to know what's out there?
And it changes all the time, doesn't it?
Change.
Dependent upon funding, dependent upon lots of different reasons. Well, something that could be there today can be very quickly gone tomorrow.
We always like to signpost and give resources to national services and support services, but also to regional. So we'll always, when we're supporting a learner and we're offering signposting tools and advice and services, we'll look for the national and we'll also look for the local. And navigating some of the local
is difficult because a lot of services do it differently.
Yeah, they do.
All over the country.
But we've got a good bank of resources. So no matter where a learner is in the country, now we've got probably some resources for each of them. And in terms of going back to the stresses of everyday life, there's so many different needs and difficulties that our learners are facing, like we do, like everybody does. And you know, we've got banks of resources and ideas and strategies for anxiety, for bereavement, for
and it allows us just to talk them through those
panic attacks. We can talk through those strategies, like
it's a big life change, isn't it?
Absolutely,
it's a big life change because it can become quite stressful just changing job anyway, can't it? Starting somewhere new,
for sure.
As like you both know, you know, it can raise your anxiety levels a bit, can't it?
And it's about knowing how to manage it, isn't it?
Yeah. You know, so for somebody, new into a working environment, new into, within early years, a predominantly female working environment that can create additional worries and stress.
Yes.
There's a lot to grasp.
It is a lot. It is a lot to grasp, and I think we need to sort of remember that. That there's so much that people are going through, and it's so hard to juggle all these things and your home life. And I think the stresses and strains of everyday life, as well as working, as well as completing your coursework, and we support a lot of learners generally around their general well-being, and I think it's easy to forget the little things that make the difference, and these little habits that you have, like journaling.
Oh, right, okay.
Journaling, writing things down, getting things when you've got a busy mind and maybe you're an overthinker or you're anxious or you worry quite a lot like I do.
Yeah.
It's good to be able to write things down, write down your thoughts and feelings. You can write them, you can draw them, you can speak them out loud, sometimes, but getting those things out of your head, whether you're talking to somebody, talking to yourself, writing them down, drawing pictures of how your thoughts and your feelings. There's something that's really positive about getting those things out of your head,
of your brain.
stopping them going round and round, and that cycle of those unhelpful thoughts going round.
Because it just goes deeper.
Yeah, it just goes deeper, and you keep worrying and worrying.
And then it affects more parts of your life as well, doesn't it?
It does. And I know the NHS have various good sort of advice on there, but one of the good things that I've used a lot with learners is the unhelpful thinking and the unwanted thoughts. And they talk about catching your thought. So you've got to think, I'm thinking negatively here, I'm thinking something.
You've got to kind of identify
You've got to identify it,
yeah,
and you've got to remember to catch it. And then you've got to sort of check it, really. So why am I thinking this? Is this the truth? Is there any evidence to support this? Quite often our thoughts and our worries are future-based.
Yeah.
They haven't happened yet.
No.
So actually a thought is just a thought.
Yeah.
We can change that thought, and we're in control of that thought.
Yeah.
And we can change it round. So you've got to catch it and think to yourself, what would I say to a friend if they were thinking like this?
Yeah.
what is there any evidence in this thought? And quite often there isn't evidence. It's your future worry. And then you've got to change it. So you've got to challenge it and change that thought and flip it round and think of something
take control.
positive.
Yeah,
take
and it is you taking
over
control
your
of
mind,
your own brain,
isn't it?
Because we're all guilty of our brains spiraling out of
absolutely.
control and
it's
worrying
usually
about.
At night,
Of course
it?
it is. And
absolutely.
a lot of learners that kind of I've worked with on specifically like negative thoughts and kind of retraining our brain to think more. And it's not necessarily thinking positively, because as humans we can't think positively all the time.
No,
you know, life isn't just this kind of meadow of sunshine and rainbows. The reality is it's easy to just go through the motions of life and not acknowledge, actually I'm being really negative and really hard on myself. And just taking that step back and almost making yourself do those, I'm spiraling out of control here. What can I do to stop it? And sometimes it might be, you know, a partner at home, somebody who you will go home and you'll offload those thoughts to, and then they might be a little bit more able to kind of challenge those thoughts. And then it becomes a habit then. And it's about empowering people for things to become a habit. So it might be like breathing exercises, grounding techniques, things like box breathing. When you're finding that, when you're in a situation, that's something that you can do, because we are breathing every day whilst we're doing everything. And so there's no reason why you can't kind of incorporate that into your day, because it's difficult to fit things in. If I'm saying to you, right, you need to journal for 10 minutes a day, you need to practice mindfulness for half an hour.
It becomes a chore, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
It becomes a chore. And as soon as something becomes a chore, it becomes another stress.
Absolutely.
Doesn't it?
Yeah.
You know,
and it's about making it part of your day and being able to do it wherever you are. Breathing is something we can do wherever we are.
Waiting for the train to come here, I was box breathing. I was practicing. I was feeling a bit anxious about coming, and the box breathing was brilliant. And
so
the 4-4-6
for people who don't
breathing.
Understand what box breathing is, do you want to give a little tutorial?
Imagine that you've got a box in front of you, or a square, and you breathe in for 4, count to 4. And really deeply breathe in so that your belly comes out, and you really deep breaths into your belly, and then you hold for 4 down the side, down your right hand side of your box, and then you exhale for 4 along the bottom, and then you hold for another 4 up the other side as you go back up. So that's just a really simple breathing technique.
And it's something that some people will physically draw a box so that they can visualize it.
It's
some people
about
are more
creating
visual
that
learners.
visual, isn't it, as well? That's important.
Whereas some people might be doing it in the supermarket and you've no idea. You know, as something, it's about identifying what that trigger is, and that can be really difficult. And I think part of our role in talking to learners and being that point of contact is that we almost, at least I hope, help them to identify what that trigger is. So we can talk through a situation. So it might be something at work and they've come home from work and felt really, really rubbish, or I can't do it, and they're really like, you know, underconfident, their self-esteem's kind of being impacted by, you know, whatever's gone on. And it's about us kind of talking through that and well, what happened next, and then how did that make you feel? And it's taking that step to reflect, because it's so easy to just carry on with the motions of life. And, you know, like you say, those 3 things: work, your apprenticeship, life, you know, somebody ringing you up on the bus on the way home, and then that completely throws out your evening because you've got plans to do, I don't know, whatever it is that you kind of doing in your spare time that you haven't, you know, we don't often stop.
No.
As humans.
No, we don't often stop and reflect, do we? And be mindful of you know, just that space, that being, and
sometimes it's just about breaking things down into small, manageable chunks,
and
isn't it?
That is probably one of the most common things that we talk about with learners, isn't it? Whether it be a learning need, you know, for somebody with dyslexia, for example, you know, doing an apprenticeship might be really challenging. There's a lot of kind of legislation to read. There's a lot of, you know, teaching sessions, that kind of thing. And how can we break it down from a wellbeing perspective, but also from a learning need perspective? Make it manageable. Let's make it manageable. Is it that you need to have more regular contact with your skills coach? Is it that we need to break down what the question's actually asking you? Because it's really easy to just read a question and then reflect and be like, actually, I don't know what it's asking me. I don't know what I need to do
Sometimes it's
here.
just the terminology, isn't
It
it? So
is,
empowering somebody with, putting the question into something like, a search engine just for a different, or, using a thesaurus on, on the laptop so it becomes more understandable and everyday life, isn't it? And said in a different way. So it's,
and can make all the difference to a learner.
And we're all guilty about for
dyslexia
using complex language without even realising.
Absolutely.
And the keywords, and particularly from a setting where there's so much legislation, there's so many kind of documents to read, and we're looking at keeping children safe in education, we're looking at the early years framework. There's so many wordy documents that actually just...
And just things like, simple, phrases like, from child development to pedagogy. Thinking, and they'll go, what's that?
Yeah. And the words make it feel scarier than what it actually
absolutely.
is. Because actually when we break it down and we know what it's asking us, actually a learner can reel off the answer no problem.
It's tough.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
And that's something we work with skills coaches to do as well, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
We'll work with skills coaches to kind of, particularly when they're new to the company or new to the skills coach role, looking at how we can adapt the way that we deliver the course
and
to
it's
meet a
not
learner's
regimented,
needs.
is it?
No, it's absolutely not.
And I think that's one of the main, benefits of Eden, really.
Great,
there's so much flexibility.
So flexible.
There's so much flexibility.
And whatever your learning style is,
we can meet that.
We can meet that.
It's adaptable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I always say to learners,
you will achieve. You will, you will achieve.
Yeah.
And it's about making it helpful. If we make it helpful, it's relevant. If we make it relevant, they can apply it. If they apply it, they can be successful. And so I always say to learners, if it's not helpful for you, then we're doing it wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
If it doesn't work, we're changing it. Don't just have to. We don't have to conform in the same way that you would do in a school, for example.
No. There's so many ways that skills coaches and the skills teachers can adapt the sessions. Can adapt the training, the resources. So many ways. There's no need for there to be any barriers in place.
Because I know we do sessions, smaller sessions for 16 to 18-year-olds, don't we?
Yeah.
Do you find that they really help?
The feedback from our learners are that they're really helpful. They feel sort of more comfortable to be able to speak out, to contribute, to engage with the session.
That's good.
It's difficult, isn't it? Because like you say, you can come into this apprenticeship with 20 years experience in early years, or you can come into this apprenticeship straight out of school, and it can be really challenging to go into a Teams call. I think even as a grown-up, even as an adult who's got 10 years of career, to go into a Teams call with 50 people and to be asked a question or to turn your microphone on and your camera, and there's all of these barriers that when we were kind of asked about it, was like, well, actually we're just removing a barrier. Because we want 16 to 18-year-olds to feel empowered to be able to give their opinions, to be able to share their thoughts. And that, generally speaking, has helped, I think.
And it'll encourage them to enjoy their apprenticeship as well,
for
won't
sure.
it? And fundamentally, enjoy early years.
Yes.
Because it's fun.
Yeah,
it's good.
Yeah,
it's a brilliant career to start in.
It is.
So if we can remove all these barriers and make it as pleasurable
Absolutely.
as we can, so they achieve. It's
That's
great.
it. It's great. Yeah.
And that's why we do what we do every single day, isn't it?
And there's nothing better than to know that you've been a part of that learner's journey and they've got to their endpoint assessment and they've achieved. Even if they've had to retake one of their assessments, it doesn't matter.
No.
They've achieved.
Look how many people have to retake their driving license. It's not as bad as it's not the end of the world.
It's not. It might feel like it, but they can get there, and they do. And I think for a lot, I'm going back a little bit now when we talked about learners knowing that there's somebody there to talk to. We've had learners who we've reached out to, they've not needed support, but they've got towards their endpoint assessment and thought, I remember that there's Beth and Sarah. They've reached back out to us. We've given them support around their exam,
like
their
exam
assessment, anxiety,
that kind of thing.
and supported them, being on the phone to them at before their assessment, doing those breathing techniques.
Got hotline
grounding,
too, haven't
Yeah.
you?
They have
grounding
been a
them.
hotline before.
We've developed a resource to help with some top tips around exam stress, how to, break things down, revise and look at things in chunks rather than all at once, and not cram everything in.
And I think,
and those things have really helped learners, and they've been really grateful. Just when they've got that bit of anxiety.
Just like being a cheerleader in the corner as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You can do this.
Yeah, there's nothing better when a learner messages you and
they
lets
say,
you know
I think it went really well, and
that they've passed.
You've got that relief that, like, actually, and I think sometimes it can be really difficult. I know that we've had before where, like, the title of our role can sometimes frighten people off.
Well, yes.
Because safeguarding, it's drilled into you from day one of you being in a job. Safeguarding. And
I'm not abused,
Yes.
isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm not being abused.
And what if I have a safeguarding and welfare officer involved? And we've worked really hard, haven't we, to kind of remove that.
There's a stigma around safeguarding mental health, and there shouldn't be. It's okay to be supported by people like us, and
I think that's why people. We will probably be involved in a learner journey and nobody will even know. We might have contact with the learner, and the only person that knows that we've got that contact is the skills coach because they referred them. And then from that point, nobody. That might be somebody who we speak to every single week or every month,
but it's just but it's breaking down that word safeguarding though,
because
as well,
it terrifies
isn't it?
people.
And it's about your overall well-being. Isn't it?
Absolutely.
It is,
and we're not scary. I hope that we don't come across as scary, but
very supportive.
But we do just kind of exist in the background, because naturally we're not going to be this public, like, I don't know. It's not the same kind of role, is it? It's quite a niche role. It's quite a niche.
Some learners don't want to say that they've had our support or that they've needed support from somebody for their well-being or their mental health or for a health need. They just don't want to say that. So
and that's fine,
that's absolutely fine.
Some people are really private, and that's fine.
And that's fine.
Isn't it?
And I think that's almost why we just kind of we are here. And people might not know that we're here.
But I think once we've reached out to a learner, they like I said before, they do tend to come back to us. I think there's a satisfaction for us in that because you even somebody that's not ready to engage and take up our support, if sometimes all it takes is for us to keep checking in with them every month, every 3 months, just to let them know we're here. They might not want to or be ready to come back to us, but we've thought about them. And I've certainly had it before where a year down the line somebody has come back. They've not engaged with us before and not acknowledged even our emails. That doesn't matter. They've come back to us. They've remembered where we are. They've remembered we're there,
and they've remembered that email that we sent saying these are the things we can do.
And I think I've learned that it's worth persevering with people and keeping them aware that we're here in the background should they need us. And fantastic if they don't, but also fantastic if they do. We're there, and there's so many things that we can offer. We're not therapists, we're not counsellors, but like Beth says, we've
life coaches.
We're listeners. We're acknowledgers. We can reassure people. We can offer those strategies. And we can signpost to the best places that'll help support them. And that's what we do, isn't it? And that's,
but it's tough, isn't it?
It is hard.
It's
so much easier said than done. It's so much easier said than done. And I suppose that's why we're in the jobs that we're in, really, isn't it? Because it's easier said than done, and you've got to know how to help yourself, and sometimes we don't know how to help ourselves, and it takes somebody to go, actually there's these people who can. And we don't have all the answers, but we certainly do our best to find the answers if we don't know them. Because it's okay for us to say we don't know the answers sometimes.
But I can find it out
for you, or we can find you a service. We were saying in this last couple of weeks we've had a few things come up between us that we've not experienced before, and So it's okay for us to be like, actually, I'm just going to do a bit of research on that. I'm just going to find out about that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know the
but
answer.
that learner will take confidence in that though
Yeah.
as well, won't they?
Yeah.
You know, and
hopefully.
as in, oh, she's going to find out for me.
Yeah.
You know, and
yeah.
you know, it's empower. You know, that's there's a lot to be said for that as
Yeah.
well, isn't it? You're demonstrating what you're teaching
Yeah.
there as well, aren't you?
And feeling like you're mattered and valued to somebody, I think, is massive, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because in a setting where it's busy and you're doing 5 things at the same time, knowing that you've got that, 20 minutes conversation where it's just one-to-one and it's just about you and what's going on for you.
And actually somebody does care.
Yeah.
Isn't it?
Yeah. And sometimes we'll just be like that listening ear where they'll offload, and sometimes we might not actually be saying anything as practical as maybe some people who want, actual
a resolution now.
Giving actual advice and sending resources and strategies. We might just be, I hear you, I understand, I get you, because we don't all have that in our lives.
No.
Not everybody has that somebody who they can go to, and I think it's important for us that, like, knowing that we have done that, even just like once a day, to know, like, I heard that person and I made them feel heard. That's where our job satisfaction comes from, really.
Yeah. Right. Well, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you for having us.
Hopefully you'll come back and talk to us
yes,
again.
We will.
And anybody can reach out.
Yes, of course.
Anybody can speak out.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you.